Hi, this is Sandy from A Little Bit of Glitter, and today I've got a card using Fawn's Ta-Da Diorama and the Ta-Da Diorama Butterfly add-on. I also used the Henry's Build a Sentiment stamp set, and I absolutely love that stamp set. I just can't believe how functional it is and how you can just create any sentiment you want. So I am so excited about that stamp set. I just can't hardly believe it. Anyway, go ahead and hit subscribe if you'd like to be notified of future videos. You can follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill or on my blog, A Little Bit of Glitter. Let's get started. I'm using a pattern paper collection from Fawn called Flower Market. I believe it's an older collection that they have. For this front part, using the Ta-Da Diorama Butterfly add-on, I am marking the center of this rectangle. Usually I eyeball the center, but with this one it's very obvious where the center of that butterfly is because of the center of the antennas and the very tip of that butterfly body. So I decided I'd go ahead and just put some little tick marks on my rectangle so I knew where to line up that little butterfly body before I ran it through my die cutter. Look at how pretty that butterfly is that's cut out of that rectangle. That is such a bonus with this die. I want to stamp the sentiment on my little side panels that pull out, but I don't want to adhere them to the front panel of my diorama. So I'm going to temporarily tape them using low-tack tape where they would fall on the front panel so that I can place them in my MISTI and line up the sentiment where I want it to be on the front of my panels. I'm placing the whole piece that is temporarily taped together in my MISTI just so that I know where my sentiment is going to be lining up. I wanted the sentiment to split in the center, plus I wasn't sure where those butterfly wings were going to fall. So I'm going to just take my time lining up those words, and then once I have that where I'm sure it's going to fall just right, I will go ahead and remove the pink or the purple butterfly and make sure that when I stamp it, everything is going to fall in the right spot. Once I have that butterfly removed, I'm going to check a couple times to make sure that my two front panels are in the right spot. They haven't shifted, they haven't moved, so that when I stamp it, everything is still going to be lined up. For the sentiment on this one, I'm using Henry's Build a Sentiment, and I absolutely, as I said before, love this sentiment. I could have changed the sentiment on this card probably 100 different ways. You could use it for Mother's Day, for graduation, for get well, for weddings. I just can't believe how functional and how versatile this stamp set is. So I'm excited about it. I think since it says spring on the stamp set that they're planning on doing other ones. So I just can't wait to see what else Fawn's going to come up with, because this is just really an incredible thing to have. All right, it looks like everything is all lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp it out. I had thought about maybe doing a heat embossed sentiment, but I kind of chickened out on doing that. I didn't have a lot of the yellow paper left, and I really wanted that to be my panels on my Ta-Da diorama. So I just went with what I felt was the safest bet. Okay, that looks really good. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut the little slots where your inserts are going to go in. Remembering to make sure that that little notch piece or the little foot at the bottom of that die is facing towards the largest piece of that panel. You have to make sure that's going in the right way, or your little inserts are not going to work right. I'll get those taped and run through my die cutter. I wanted to make that little butterfly net special looking, the one that the little fox is holding. So I went ahead and used a little scrap of vellum paper, and I heat embossed it with some white embossing powder. I also had another net that I had colored just the handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the net piece off of the vellum and the net piece off of the one that I've stamped and colored, and then I'll glue the vellum piece onto the colored handle of the little butterfly net, and it just kind of gives it the appearance of something that's kind of lacy or what a butterfly net would actually be. So I wanted to carry the theme of the inside of the diorama to the outside on my panels. So I knew I needed to add some grass to those front panels. I didn't want that grass to extend all the way on the yellow, so I went ahead and I just masked off those two panels right at the fold of where that large panel is. And then I placed my grassy stencil down. I went in with some Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, and then I just went back over that with some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink just to give the top of those grass blades just a little bit of color and a little bit more dimension. I suppose I could have speckled the grass, and I probably should have, but I think I was just being lazy and I didn't want to cover the sides of those panels. While I have some of that mowed lawn still on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and touch up those little insert pieces, just the top of that grass, to kind of give it a little bit more dimension and interest. For the back piece, which is my sky, I'm going to take some chipped sapphire Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to go around those edges just to give that a little bit of dimension, a little bit of interest, and soften it up. For my front panel with the butterfly, I'm going to use some Villainous Potion to go around the outside edges of that panel. I didn't go into where the butterfly was. I just thought that might have been just a little bit too much, so I stayed just on the outsides of that piece. And on the side panels, I'm using just a little bit of mustard seed just around the edges at the top and on the side up to that grass. I'm going to put just some adhesive tape on that smallest piece of the side panel. I'm going to line it up with the outside edge to the very bottom and in between the two stitched lines on that back panel. Once I get that one down, I'll go ahead and fold that so it's fallen right in the middle of that piece of paper. I'll put the adhesive tape on the other piece. I'll go ahead and fold that in half and then just line it up right there in the center and press it down. Super easy to line up that second one. You just have to match the two centers. Next, I'm going to adhere the little brackets to that front panel. They're the brackets that hold those two panels in place that slide open. Each one of those pieces has two little scored marks on it, so I'll add my adhesive to those little pieces and then fold those down and line them up with that notch that's on the front panel, and then I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side. Now I'm going to work on the little insert. I'm going to start with the back one first. The insert has little indented lines on each end that you fold down so that you can slide them into those slots on the side. Go ahead and you fold those down, and then you just slide it in those slots, and then you open them back up. Of course, I have to open and close it a few times just to see how cool it is. I thought it would be neat to have the butterflies look like they were flying in the air. So I had some scrap acetate and I just cut strips of that, thin strips, and I adhered a butterfly to the end of the strips. There really was no measurement. I just cut them extra long because I didn't know how long I'd want them. And I glued a butterfly to the end of each of those strips and just set them aside to dry. I wanted to put some clouds in the sky in the background, so I used the simple puffy cloud frames. I cut those out of white cardstock. I used the larger one and just cut off a piece of it and then just butted it up against that left panel. In retrospect, I wish I would have kept it below that stitching line because it kind of shows when my card is closed, but that's okay. I always say I'm not a machine, and everything is always a learning process, so I'm okay with it. I'll go ahead and glue that one on, and then I'm using a smaller one that I glue on just a little bit further over to the right. I had also thought about stamping some little flight trails on the sky and maybe gluing some butterflies on it, but then I thought that kind of defeated the purpose of keeping things really dimensional, so I just left the clouds in the sky and kept the butterflies in flight on the panel or the insert. My little butterflies on the acetate strips are dry, so I'm going to go ahead and start putting them on my inserts. I also am going to glue the little butterfly net in my fox's hand. I think the biggest tip I have for this particular diorama is to always keep in mind that everything pretty much needs to be glued and focused in the center of the diorama, because when you close those panels, everything kind of squishes into the center. So that's where my struggle session always begins. I always try to decorate the whole insert, and then my panels don't close. So I will spend a lot of time placing my pieces and replacing my pieces until I can get my panels to close nicely and not bubble. So I think, like I said, that is my biggest tip for this particular card, is keep everything centered on those panels. I had initially put my fox on that back insert, and I thought it was working pretty well until I put the front panel on, or the front panel with the butterfly on, and then you could barely see him. So I took him off and I put him on that very front panel. I also had to move his little butterfly net again because he was still in the way of getting those panels to shut. But it turned out he just worked perfectly on that front panel. My little friends and elements for this card are all from the Butterfly Kisses stamp set. I did stamp a little butterfly trail on that upper right-hand corner of the cutout butterfly. It just needed to be balanced out a little bit. When I colored all of these little things, I just did a bunch of coloring, and I usually do that. I usually have extras left over. I had done a bunch of little grass pieces, and I wound up not using them at all since I had went ahead and inked the bottom of that those two panels. So I'm going to go back and forth and just kind of add on my butterflies. I add on some little flowers, and then I add my two little friends on the corners. And when you open up this little diorama, they just match so perfectly with that little fox in the field catching that butterfly. It's just so darn cute. I just really love these little diorama cards. I used a little bit of mowed lawn to just touch up the edges on that pattern paper, just to kind of soften it up, since I had done that on all the other pieces of the pattern paper. And then I went ahead and just put it on just some regular white cardstock as my card base. I'm going to add a few strips of foam tape to the back of the diorama piece so that when the recipient gets it, they'll have a little bit of space so that they can open up the diorama. Sometimes I have a really hard time getting that lined up straight. And since I had so many layers of glue tape, I went ahead and used one of my quilting rulers to help me, or use as a guideline to get that put on just right. Anyway, that pretty much does it for this card. I think it's just adorable. I love the Henry's Build a Sentiment. I just think that is probably my favorite part of Lawn Fawn's new release this time. I hope you have enjoyed this video and the process of putting this card together. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you'd like this, if you like the video. You can subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill, or on my blog, A Little Bit of Glitter. I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.